Thousands of years ago, along the Nile, the greatest power on earth was rising. The pharaohs declared themselves living gods, ruling with absolute power and unquestioned authority. But the price of this splendor was paid by the Israelites in blood and sweat and endless suffering. One night, Pharaoh awoke from a nightmare that would shake his throne. According to Targum Onkelos, a lamb in his dream outweighed all of Egypt. The magicians interpreted the dream. A child born among the Hebrews would bring Egypt to ruin. Pharaoh's command was simple. Every newborn Hebrew boy was to be put to death. Moses was born, and the Quran tells of God placing peace into his mother's heart. His mother hid him for 3 months, but in the end, the river became the only escape. A fragile basket, a mother's whispered prayer, and the fierce, unforgiving waters of the Nile. From a distance, his sister Miriam watched her brother's fate unfold, gripped by fear. The current carried the basket straight toward Pharaoh's palace. Here the accounts diverge. Was the savior a wife, or was she a daughter? According to the Torah, it was Pharaoh's daughter, Baitya, who drew him from the water. The Quran, however, emphasizes that it was Pharaoh's wife, Asya, who took him under her protection. A crisis erupted in the palace as the infant Moses refused every wet nurse brought to him. Miriam stepped forward and said, "I can find a woman to nurse the child for you." By divine design, Moses was gently returned to the loving arms of his own mother. Moses grew into a prince, raised in privilege within the very palace of his enemy. According to the Midrash, as a child, he once seized Pharaoh's crown, staring fear within the court. To test him, they placed golden burning coals before the child, watching his choice in silence. Moses reached for the coal, and from that moment, a lasting impediment marked his speech. His education was meticulous, granting him mastery of all the wisdom of Egypt. He was trained as a scribe, learning the arts of diplomacy and governance. As a prince, he mastered military strategy, honing his skills in command and combat. Yet even surrounded by palace luxury, he never forgot the pain and suffering of his own people. His heart remained with his chained brothers, suffering on the far side of the Nile. By the age of 40, the moment had come for him to choose who he truly was. One day, he left the safety of palace walls and stepped among his own people. The oppression he witnessed was far harsher than anything he had ever imagined. He witnessed a Hebrew man being savagely beaten, powerless beneath relentless blows. Moses intervened, striking the officer with the full force of his princely strength. The blow proved fatal, and the Egyptian collapsed lifeless to the ground. Gripped by the panic, he hid the body beneath the sand and slipped away, unseen and alone. The next day, he saw 2 Hebrews fighting and stepped in, trying to separate them. The Hebrew confronted him, saying, "Will you kill me as you killed the Egyptian yesterday?" Moses realized the truth had spread, and that Pharaoh had issued a sentence of death. Leaving the borders of Egypt marked the beginning of the hardest journey he would ever face. With only a cloak and a staff, he stepped into the vast and unforgiving desert. For days, without food or water, he walked on, guided only by the will of God. At last, after the long ordeal, he reached the distant lands of Midian. At a well, a crowded group of shepherds had gathered, waiting with their flocks. The male shepherds refused to let 2 young women water their animals. Though utterly exhausted, Moses rose to his feet and intervened, coming to the women's aid. Alone, he lifted the massive stone, sealing the well, and watered their flocks himself. The daughters returned home and told their father of the heroic stranger they had met. Shuaib, known as Jethro, invited Moses to his table and offered him shelter. From princely power to life as a fugitive, Moses was beginning an entirely new chapter. Shwaipi spoke to him plainly, saying, "Work for me, and I will give you my daughter in marriage." Taking his staff in hand, Moses went up into the mountains, beginning life as a shepherd. According to the Torah, he lived in these lands for a full 40 years, shaping the man he would become. The Quran, however, records that his service lasted 8 years, or possibly 10, by choice. He married and had children, as his former life faded like a distant dream. But his destiny was not yet complete, and Egypt was still crying out in pain. One night, he left the lands of Midian with his family, setting out toward an uncertain fate. The journey grew harsh, the air turned cold, and he found himself lost along the way. He spotted a fire on the horizon and told his family, "Stay here, I will go ahead." He said, "Perhaps I will bring back a burning ember, or find someone to guide us." When he reached the mountain's peak, he realized the fire before him was no ordinary campfire. It was a bush ablaze, yet unconsumed, radiant and filled with an otherworldly light. The bush stood engulfed in flames, yet not a single leaf was touched by the fire. A voice called out, "Remove your sandals, O Moses, you stand in the sacred valley of Tuar." When he heard the words, "I am your Lord," he fell to the ground in awe. In the Torah, God reveals himself, saying, "I am who I am," beyond all time and definition. In the Quran, he speaks with absolute authority, declaring, "There is no God but me, so worship me alone." God then asked him, saying, "What is that in your right hand, O Moses?" Moses replied, saying, "It is my staff. I lean upon it, and with it I tend my flock." A command rang out, "Throw it down," and the staff transformed into a massive serpent. Moses recoiled in fear, but a voice called out, "Do not fear, grasp it." The moment he grasped the serpent, it turned back into his familiar staff. Then came a second sign. He placed his hand within his cloak, and it emerged, shining like the sun. Moses asked with hesitation, "Who am I to confront Pharaoh and stand before him?" He said, "My tongue is hesitant. Aaron speaks far more clearly than I do." God appointed his brother Aaron as his helper and spokesman, standing beside him in the mission. Guided by revelation, Aaron set out, and the two brothers met at last in the desert. No longer a fugitive prince, he was returning now as a messenger with a divine mission. A new pharaoh now ruled the palace, possibly the powerful Ramses II. They stood firm before him, declaring with authority, "Send the children of Israel with us." Pharaoh scoffed at him, sneering, "Did we not raise you here among us, Moses?" The vizier Haman accused Moses of sorcery, casting doubt upon his message. Moses cast down his staff, and upon the palace marble, a massive serpent suddenly appeared. Pharaoh dismissed it at once, declaring, "This is sorcery. Our magicians can do far greater." From every corner of the kingdom, the most skilled magicians were summoned to the palace. According to tradition, the magicians were led by their foremost masters, Jannes and Jambres. The day of the great confrontation had arrived, and all of Egypt held its breath. The magicians cast down their ropes, and the ground seemed to swarm with serpents. Moses cast down his staff, and it turned into a living serpent, consuming every false creation before it. The magicians understood at once, proclaiming, "We believe in the Lord of Moses and Aaron." Pharaoh erupted in rage, roaring, "Did you dare believe without my permission?" The magicians did not renounce their faith, becoming the first martyrs of this struggle. Because of Pharaoh's defiance, the first plague struck. The Nile was turned to blood. For an entire week, the Egyptians could not drink, as the Nile reeked of decay. The second plague followed with frogs, invading beds and even the kneading troughs of bread. Lice and insects spread across the land, and all sense of peace was gone. Swarms of locusts descended, devouring every crop that had been left behind. With each plague, Pharaoh pleaded, saying, "Pray that they depart," only to withdraw his word again. A hailstorm unlike anything in Egypt's history swept across the land. The fifth plague was boils, striking nobles and slaves alike, sparing no one. For 3 relentless days, a crushing darkness paralyzed all of Egypt. The Quran summarizes these events as 9 clear signs, unmistakable in their meaning. At last Pharaoh broke, commanding them, "Go now, leave Egypt immediately." Before long, Pharaoh's army regretted the decision and set out in relentless pursuit. Pharaoh shouted in fury, "I will catch them and bring them back!" When the caravan reached the shore of the sea, there was nowhere left to flee. Behind them stood Egypt's most advanced army. Ahead lay the vast blue waters. The people panicked, crying out, "We are trapped now, O Moses." Moses answered with certainty, "No, my Lord is with me. He will surely guide me." Then the command came from God, declaring, "Strike the sea with your staff." The sea split apart, each side rising high like a towering mountain. Through the heart of the sea, a completely dry path appeared. The miracle had unfolded. A small, vulnerable group crossed through, walking between towering walls of water. Pharaoh pressed forward in arrogance, proclaiming, "The path has been opened for me." When the Israelites reached the far shore, Moses struck the sea once more with his staff. The waters closed in, burying Egypt's pride. As the waters closed over him, Pharaoh cried out in desperation, "I believe." As we reach the end of this story, let us remember the message Moses left behind. He said, "Do not fear, Allah is with us." The Nile continues to flow, and the story itself never truly ends. If you enjoyed this epic journey, follow us for more stories like this. Until we meet again in the next chapter of our documentary journey.